we go. Awesome.
Yeah. What do you guys do?
Hey, what's up, everyone out there on Facebook? Welcome. Sorry, I was a little behind there. So those of you who've never seen me before, Dr. Jason Bape, your chiropractor, your chiropractor extraordinaire, bringing you education, information, motivation, inspiration on the regular. And tonight is no different than any other night. By the way, if you've never seen me before, please put a number 1 in the comments below. If you've seen me before, come back for more, put that number 2. Plus some of these great slides we have for tonight. And there are none. So I thought we had at least a intro slide. But for those of you, if you saw, we're going to talk a little bit about GMOs, what they are, and talk specifically about glyphosate and its negative effects and the Maha movement. And there was definitely some pushback about some things that were announced recently. So we're going to talk about that today because I think it's kind of important we cover this as it becomes more and more prevalent. And those of you know I don't shy away from the hard stuff. So we're going to talk about that now. All right. Again, as you come on, please feel free to say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. 1, if you've never been here before. 2, if you've seen me before and I've come back for more. And as always, the best way to say thank you is to share this out on your page, by message group, and post whatever up at the top. You could hit our link tree. That's who I am, where we are. And if you live on Long Island or in the city and you want to come out to visit us at the Vitality Center, the one-stop holistic shop, the only of its kind, right here on Long Island and hop right off the LA in Northern State. Okay. So a lot of you, if you follow the news, Robert Kennedy just came out with a big report recently in just the last 24, 48 hours. And one of the things that we've heard is a big pushback today alone from a group of farmers in Ohio and all this kind of thing. And basically one of the things that they were saying is that one of the reasons why we may be one of the most chronically ill countries has to partially do with our pesticides and the stuff in our soil. And the farmers are coming out saying that this is settled science. What are you talking about? We're not hurting anybody, blah, blah, blah. Well, the fact is, glyphosate, we've been talking about for years, being a very dangerous pesticide that is used pretty widely. And it is not safe. It is not settled science, and it's BS to say it is. And it's so polluted into our foods nowadays and into our soil that it's very hard to escape it. So let's talk a little about the history of glyphosate and where it came from. So, for those of you who may have heard of Monsanto, which is now Bayer. Bayer bought them out a few years ago. Monsanto, basically what they started to do was they created a pesticide, glyphosate, in the 60s. And it killed things, killed all the bugs. But the problem is it killed all the plants too. So not very good if you're killing everything. So then they realized, well, what if we genetically modify the plants so that they become resistant to the pesticide? So we'll kill all the weeds and we'll kill all the bugs, but we won't kill the plant. That's great. And genetically modified foods were born. And what they didn't tell you then, or maybe they didn't know then, was when you change those structures of those proteins, you've made them foreign, and you made them foreign to anything ever seen on this planet. So I always tell people, when you genetically modify a food, you've changed its structure to a place where it's a foreign protein the body hasn't seen. And when you look at foods that are genetically modified, a lot of times they are much more allergenic. Soy is a great example of this. When you look at when they moved to a genetically modified soy in Britain, which is probably over 15 years ago now, they saw a 50% increase in all their soy allergies just from changing over from non-GMO to GMO or to genetically modified. And we start changing this. And again, if you're eating these genetically modified proteins, well, what does your body do with protein? Well, sometimes it breaks a little bit of it down for energy, but usually it uses to make more of you, right? I make more protein. I make all that muscle and everything else, immunoglobulins. Well, if you're using genetically modified proteins, well, now you're genetically modified. Or they genetically modify that corn that gets fed to your cow that eats that genetically modified corn and make more of themselves, then you eat that meat. You see how this all goes? How the toxic load comes in there, and when you start changing those protein structures that our body's using, you're becoming more toxic, and your body's not what it used to be. Now they talk. The Ohio farmers came today about saying that that they're not, basically they're trying to protect themselves, and I get it. Listen, they're told these things are okay. They use them. They're trying to help people and make food. I get it, make a living, but at the end of the day, glyphosate is dangerous. It's a big neuroendocrine disruptor, so it's going to mess with your hormones. It's going to mess with your nervous system. It causes cancers. Like, we see all these things, right? In fact, if it was so safe, there wouldn't be this giant lawsuit about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma against Roundup, because Roundup is glyphosate. All right. So why is that? All right. Why would that be if it's all okay? Because it's all BS, folks. There's a lot of whitewashing. There's a lot of stuff out there. And the fact is, glyphosate is in our food. And then to even find glyphosate-free products is hard. Even some of the things that are clean now, what was that soil like before? Like recently, I have a big berm in the front of my house that was overgrown from people before we moved in. And finally got it ripped out. The guys wanted to just take bobcats, whatever. So I finally had it all ripped out by a guy I worked with a couple of years ago that does this kind of stuff. And then he wanted to put down weed killer and then put mulch down. And I was like, well, what are you going to put down? He was going to do Roundup. I'm like, no. He's like, okay. He had no problem even finding an organic thing. Great. But again, even if he didn't, like, he put all that in there, yeah, I'm not over in that berm hanging out, but that gets into the soil. What happens when I want to go plant something there a year later and I'm digging in that soil? What happens in the soil that maybe had it sprayed before I lived here? You know, it's like all this stuff that we're constantly being hit with. And what if you feel that, all right, pesticides aren't for you, right? But yet you live in an area with this farmland. Well, guess what you're getting sprayed with? Guess what you're getting hit with? You look at Long Island, the history of it, where we are now. This used to be all the potato farms out here. What's our groundwater like, right? What's all the crap that's in our system, in our waters, that's affecting us? Like, no one talks about it, but it's all toxic load. And at the end of the day, ketones, it's about the load. And it's about the load. We talked about this before. It's about that fail point where your body hits, and it's how much load and toxic level can it take. You know, talk about these microplastics that are in our foods, right? That you can't get out there in your body forever, kind of thing. What about that mRNA vaccine that people had? You know, it all adds up. And it's funny that Kennedy talked about this too. He's like, you know, you talk about the number 3 cause of death in this country, you know, behind is basically, you know, he didn't say medical error. He basically said pharmaceutical drugs, and I'm going to say it's a combination of medical error and pharmaceutical drugs and an interaction, all those things. And well, why is that? And if y'all watched me 5 years ago when we talked about COVID, and basically I said, well, when the number 3 cause of death in this country is the medical practice being done and people dying from error interactions and everything else, and then you expected those same system to go after fix a disease they didn't know anything about, and then you wonder what happened to us, and then the lies, everything. Let's not even get into the COVID stuff again. But do you guys understand that this is the reason? They even said we have 70% of our population is medicated. All right, we use 70% of the world's drugs, but only 4.2% of the world population. What the hell is that? So it means either one of two things. We're either the sickest country there is, or the most over-medicated country, or a combination. I'm going to tell you it's a combination of the two things, right? And if you look at it, one of the things that says the over-medicalization of our children is why we have so much chronic disease. One of the big reasons why. Well, what does that mean? Sorry, I was outside cleaning up some stuff, so my allergies a little irritated. But what does that mean? Well, it means we're drugging our kids, we're drugging our adults, and we're giving them the vaccines like they've never been before. Right? We're one of the most, if not the most vaccinated country. I think Britain, I forget who's vaccinates more. Yeah. Our morbidity rate for our children is not in the top third of the world. You know, we're the most medicated country in the world. We are. We're the only country that allows for medicines to be advertised on TV. The only one. And we're the most medicated. So we are over medicated. I think, unfortunately, traditional medicine relies on the pill for every ill model. It's always about, here, take this drug for this symptom. I think we're too afraid to just let life be life, and we just medicate away every symptom, right? You know, a lot of times things is not always easy. I'm not saying, you know, people don't have anxiety, people don't have depression. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, though, I think every time there's one little thing, we're medicating for. And there's so much medication. Like, I can't, the list that I see on a regular basis is like, my God, like thyroid is one of the most over medicated things I've ever seen. Ridiculously medicated. And it's usually not about a thyroid problem. It's just they see TSH go up and they start throwing meds at people. You know, women, the birth control levels that we do with birth control pills and the IUDs that are stuck with hormones, or the shot, you know, that, and then you throw in the bone density. Like, there's, every time you turn around, there's a drug for something. It's ridiculous. And you only need 2 medications to have 80% chance of interaction between those medications. How many people are on more than 2? And then you get into the mental health, right? And as we continue to increase our vaccinations and we see a lot more of the other illnesses come, then we start medicating all those symptoms from those other diseases, like ADD. It's a big snowball, folks. So I know we talked about chronic disease last week, but understand that what we keep doing to our environment is part of it. So you can't ignore these things. You have to look at things like GMOs. You got to look at things like glyphosate and these other pesticides, because it's everywhere. And how about chemtrails? I mean, you can say I'm a crazy person, you know, conspiracy, but you know, some states have just banned them. So if it was a BS thing, why would a state ban it, right? Why are we dropping all this stuff in the atmosphere? It's supposed to help, you know, protect the, you know, there's some theories about putting it out there to help block suns. We don't increase our it's all this BS. So at the end of the day, what do we keep doing to pollute ourselves in the name of protecting the planet? What is the stuff as a pollutant that's allowed out from things like our cars and power plants and all those kind of things? Listen, we have regulations for a reason. We have an EPA for a reason. I'm not anti-regulation, but I'm anti-agenda and things being done to further an agenda and not about health. And that's what it comes down to, is like finding that line and saying, how do we make everyone healthier? And still protect ourselves and protect the planet without hurting ourselves and causing more chronic disease. And I think part of the biggest problem is really we have to look at what we're doing to ourselves from a medical standpoint, as well as what we're doing to our environment and our food. Because at the end of the day, our food sources aren't what they were, right? They're overfarmed. There's not as much mineral in the soil, and the crap that we put into the soil, these disgusting chemicals, are dangerous, right? And then we've genetically modified our foods so that way they can tolerate the chemicals that we're giving them. Do you see the craziness of it all? Instead of saying, hey, I made this pesticide that kills everything, or shoot, it killed our food, we better change the food, not change the chemical. Duh. And now, you know, when someone calls it into question, it's like, oh, how dare you? You're making things up. We're perfectly safe and all. No. And it's not, it's about then having to think, all right, well, what do we do instead, right? It's never like, okay, well, there's a problem here. What do we do to mitigate that problem? Well, we don't keep spraying it. We find other options. And you know what? If the government wants to step in and subsidize something, to subsidize these maybe more expensive but healthier chemicals or organic sprays to protect the crops than it is to just, you know, get these, you know, tell people, oh, it's safe, don't worry about it, don't look over here, right? You know, everyone's all pissed about this report, but everyone on this side of it, who like myself and other doctors that have been talking from a holistic standpoint about our foods and everything else, the over medicalization, that new word that everyone's going to be using, We've been saying this for decades, folks. And the fact is now it's finally happening. Everyone's like, well, that's settled science. Well, you know what? No, it's not. And at the end of the day, science is never settled. And that's the whole point of the scientific method is, yes, you have a theory or a hypothesis. You then go out, set out to see, does the hypothesis hold or not hold? You don't set out to prove your theory correct. You set out to, you have a theory and you test it. Did it work? Did it not? And the more you do it over and over, the more that you can say that it is a fact, right? But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that new evidence can't come up at some point and challenge that, because studies are flawed. If you look at them, they can be very flawed. I've torn plenty of them up. All right, and you can tear up any study really, but at the same time, you have to look at it. Was the sample size good? Was it double-blind placebo controlled? Was it done by a reputable magazine? Or who sponsored this thing? What vectors did they not think of? Right, and then what should happen is, let's say you did this study and you proved, and the theory of X was proven true by this study. Well, someone doesn't just do the study over again. That's one thing you can do to prove it. What's the reproducibility, right? But then it's all right, what are the vectors that we didn't think of? All right, how do we filter for those? And let's try it again. Oh, it failed this time. Well, I'm sorry, but remember, it all comes down to, where's my funding coming from? What's my reputation? There's so many factors here. But the whole point of scientific method is to take all that out of it in an ideal world and say, this is how you test a theory. And eventually it's tested, proven positive, until proven true until it's not. And then you have to be able to pivot and understand that. Science today is not science that was 40 years ago. We used to think there was no lymph in the brain. We know that's not true. We used to think that there was no insulin resistance to the brain. We know that's not true. Alzheimer's, right? You can keep going. I can pick different things that we thought was X, and now we know it's Y, because new things were found and tested and things like that. But if we believe that science was always settled, we'd never go anywhere. All right? And if you were questioning the science, right? Remember, we were questioning the science. The fact is, we were questioning science with proven science. I'll never forget. It was being told that the COVID vaccine, you couldn't have natural immunity. You had to have artificial immunity. But the fact is, at the end of the day, the only reason artificial immunity would even work is if you're hijacking the natural immunity process to make it work. But when you forget that part, it was the most ridiculous thing, right? So, by the way, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, please drop number 3 in the comments below. Let me know you're watching. Say hello. If you are watching live or replay, if you're watching replay, watch replay. If you haven't shared this out, please do so. Put on a page, or message in the group, and a post, whatever. And again, leave a message, a note here, and we'll respond, whether it's live or a replay. So I'll explain the stupid logic proof here. So when your body gets exposed to something, it has to work its way into the body. The body starts mounting a response. Part of that response includes antibodies. Part of the response includes B cells and T cells and things like that. But the antibody response. So we know the body will create antibodies to fight the thing. So the way a vaccine works is they inject you with a little bit of the thing to make you create antibodies. So that way, if you ever get exposed to the disease in the real world, you already know how to fight it off. Okay. But to say that, well, if you have the disease, you can't have antibodies. You don't maintain an immunity. Well, it's ridiculous, because what's the whole point of the vaccine is to use that part of the immune system to hijack it to create these antibodies. If you didn't have a natural immunity, then you couldn't create an artificial one, because you're biohacking the system, but not in a healthy way. It was just stupidity. And then what we found is that it just knocked people's immunity out. You want to have someone have COVID multiple times, give them a vaccine, and there goes their immunity they had from the actual disease. Anyway, COVID vaccine was the biggest medical failure known to man, and it's probably the most heinous crime ever. If you haven't seen the recent studies, 470 to 600,000 Americans died from the mRNA vaccines, more than World War I, World War II, and Vietnam combined. And things they said about miscarriages, we said this 4 years ago, that the literature was wrong. It was saying that basically it was safe if you were pregnant, but if you gave it in the first trimester, it was 80-something% chance of a miscarriage. They said it was maybe much lower than that, or negligible. In fact, some of the recent stuff has come out and saying it was like just like taking an abortion pill. But yet it's perfectly safe. Give it to your pregnant patient with the flu shot, the RSV, and here's your new DTaP. No, folks, no. No. So I don't care what y'all think about settled science. It's not true. Science is never settled. And if you're too afraid to look at, have the science questioned, then you know that your science is BS. Right? So those of you who stick around here and goes, vaccine science is settled science and this, that's true and blah, blah, it doesn't have anything to do with autism. Maybe. But if you're so sure that your science is real, what's the harm in testing it? Right? The theory will just get proven out that it was wrong. It wasn't true. But what if it does so that there's something else there? And we're ignoring it because someone's so upset about this fear that you're taking away their safety. That's all it is, right? Some of the loudest voices during COVID about masks, about distancing, about vaccines were nothing more than fear. And remember, your brain wants safety. And when safety is questioned, people get angry. Because the logic proof going for the rail was if the vaccine, if I didn't want the vaccine, but you had one, why did it matter if I was vaccinated? Because we've been saying that about vaccines for decades. If your vaccine is protecting you, and I don't get, why does it matter if I get the vaccine? Right? Your vaccine is protecting you. If I can't give it to you if you have your vaccine, unless your vaccine doesn't work. In which case, then I could give it to you. In which case, why would I want the vaccine if it didn't work to begin with? But when you start watching that happen, you see the thing go off the ramp. Fuck you, it works. Oop, I cursed. It happens. I'll never forget this one girl on TikTok. You watched her go try to logic proof it. Well, if you don't get the vaccine and then you get sick, well, then I can get sick, but I have the vaccine. So, well, how would that? And you see her trying to do it in the logic struggle, and then you're all killers. And that was how she ended it. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. You could see the train off the tracks and then nothing else to be said. And when you're scared, you shut people down. That's what it is. So anyway, that's what I'm talking about. So it's about trying to avoid genetically modified foods because it changes who you are, changes the structure of that protein, makes you more allergenic and have more reaction to it. It makes you different. And the more you do that, the more you're not going to make the right proteins for enzymes. You're not going to make the right proteins for your DNA. All those kinds of things are going to happen. And you're going to break down. And then we talk about things like glyphosate. These things are real. If you start looking into the research, they're real dangerous things that are in your food supply. And just because you modify the food so it's not affected by it doesn't mean it's not in the food. Doesn't mean it's not getting into you. It's not this huge neuroendocrine disruptor, which we've seen that it is. It's not messing with your thyroid. It's not messing with your sex hormones. It's not messing with causing cancers, right? So avoid these things as much as you can. Don't go buy Roundup, all right? There wouldn't be a class action lawsuit against Roundup for people with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma if it wasn't something to it. So anyway, I just thought it would be interesting to talk Maha a little bit tonight because I think it's important. It doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter who you want to be president is not. We have a president. That's who it is. And this is the guy who is our head of the HHS, right? And I'm hoping that he does the right thing. And it looks like he is. He's exposing the stuff we've known is true. He's starting to put it in the mainstream. We're starting to question these things. And hopefully we'll make ourselves healthier. It'd be nice to not have to be in the fringes anymore and being like, I told you so. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. If you found this is helpful, please drop a 4 in the comments below and write thank you if you did find it helpful. And please feel free to share this out. Put it in a page, private message, group, and post, whatever. With that, I will bid you all adieu. Have a great evening. We'll see you all in the next video. Dr. Ketone out. Oh, you know what I'm going to do before I say I'm out? I'm going to go to oh, there it was. There's our thumbnail. That's not the one I want. That's the one I want. So thank you. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. And as always, we'll see you all in the next video. And thank you from all of us here at the Vitality Center. Have a healthy night.